London with all the top stories from Europe, including the UK under fire. Britain reviews its policy of selling arms to Bahrain. And dropping his doctorate, a German minister gives up his PhD over claims he faked his thesis.
We're getting reports from our people on the ground in Manama that police in Bahrain have once again used live ammunition against anti-government protesters there. This was as funerals were held for those killed in deadly raids on Thursday. Let's bring in our correspondent in the Bahraini capital. We're not naming him for security reasons. As I understand it, this was as the funeral for one of those killed in the early days of the protests was just ending. What happened then?
Well, yes, it's still a very confused picture, David, but it does sound like an extremely serious situation here. Let me tell you what I know at this stage. As you say, one of those that died, the man who first died in all this, Ali al-Mahma, it was the last day of his funeral commemorations today, and there were people mourning for him in a cemetery pretty close to the center of the city. Well, at the end of that period of mourning, the mourners left and they started marching down the road, and they started marching towards the Pearl roundabout. And then live fire could be heard, and we understand that someone has fired on the protesters. Now, reports are telling us it was not the police, it was the army. They're telling us that this time it was not tear gas, it was not rubber bullets, it was not that bird shot sprayed at protesters. We're told it was live fire that was fired at the protesters. David, as I speak just moments ago, I am still hearing gunshots in the center of the city. I've spoken to doctors in the last few minutes. When I called a doctor who I know in the hospital for information, he pleaded with me. He said, please send us help. We are worried they're going to come into the hospital soon. He said the hospital is overwhelmed with patients. He said we have scores of patients. He said I don't think we've lost any of them yet, but most of them have head wounds. He says it appears that they were firing at their heads. There are no injuries in the legs, no injuries in the bodies, he said. It's nearly all head wounds. He also gave another worrying report saying that he'd heard that the live fire was coming not just from forces on the ground, but also from a helicopter overhead.
What is the stated policy of the army in all of this at the moment?
The stated policy of the army is that there are not supposed to be any demonstrations, but that seems to be very selectively applied right now, because for much of the afternoon there has been a big demonstration, a demonstration in favor of the government. No one stopped that. In fact, there were policemen there actively encouraging it. So in one part of the town earlier, they were encouraging demonstrations in favor of the government. Another part of the town in the last hour, they appear to have been firing live ammunition at the protesters.
But equally, the authorities there might maintain that when thousands of people turned out, not just for this funeral, but for other funerals in a different part of the country, there was no attempt made to stop them doing that.
That is true, David. I mean, I think the authorities are in a difficult position in the sense that they don't know how to stop these protests, which, when they allow them to occur, get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the demands get greater and greater and greater. But I think there will be international condemnation if what we are hearing now is confirmed. We're hoping to get more reports and more precise evidence of what's happened, but I am getting numerous reports suggesting that live fire has been fired at protesters, and as I say, this is coming from, among other people, hospital consultants, and I've spoken to two who are seeing the injuries. And as I say again, these are live bullets. This is not the bird shot, the shotgun pellets that had been used to disperse protesters. It's not rubber bullets. It's live ammunition.
Thank you very much indeed for that update. Back with you, I'm sure, later on in this news hour. Supporters of the Libyan leader are threatening now to kill demonstrators. Muammar Gaddafi's Revolutionary Committee says anyone crossing what they describe as a red line will be committing suicide. There are already reports of more than 20 deaths. The violence is centred on cities in the country's east, including Libya's second biggest city, that's Benghazi. Hazem Sika reports.
a defiant show of support for Libya's strongman. State TV shows Muammar Gaddafi with cheering crowds in Tripoli, rallying behind the man who's ruled them for 4 decades. It's in the face of widening protests that may be the most serious challenge yet to his regime. Inspired by events in Tunisia and Egypt, the biggest demonstrations have been taking place in the country's second biggest city, Benghazi. A number of videos posted on YouTube, but which we cannot independently verify, appear to show the violent response from security forces. Gunshots are clearly heard, and a young man with what looks like a bullet wound to his head is found near a large pool of blood. And witnesses say more demonstrations have been taking place in Benghazi on Friday.
What's happening in Benghazi is a big massacre. People are being killed on the streets. People are demonstrating peacefully. They are asking for a decent life, not more than a decent life. There is in front of me, in front of the main court in Benghazi, more than 50,000 people.
With tight controls on media and communications in Libya, it's been difficult to confirm the extent of the protests and the violence. But with the regime vowing to crush any further attempt to challenge Gaddafi, more unrest is likely to come. Hazem Sika, AlJazeera.
Let's talk to Mohammed El-Bakhawi, an engineer, joins us from Benghazi. Our reporter there saying it's impossible for us to verify the scale, the extent of the protests in Libya's second city. What can you tell us about what's happening there?
I can tell you today there is a big massacre. While the people were marching to the cemetery, burying 30 martyrs on their way, live ammunition, they were hit with live ammunition in front of the army brigade in Birka. And 4 demonstrators were killed, or barriers were killed. And there is a big massacre happening. We hear every few minutes that there are people killed.
Mr. El-Bakhawi, who do you believe fired the shots that killed these people?
The people who fired these shots are the security of the government, the revolutionary committees, and the security brought from outside Benghazi. We don't think that our Libyan people can do this. I think we think that as in Beida, there are some African, French-speaking Africans are being brought to the eastern region to kill our people. There is a big massacre. Here, the people are really upset with the war. It is not possible. Where is the Human Rights International? Where is the United Nations? Or did Gaddafi bribe them with his billions of dollars? Where is Obama? Where is the rest of the world? People are dying on the street. They had a court for Hariri, one person, a court, international court. Tens of people are dying in Benghazi today. Please, reveal our message. Our people have been killed. Now thousands of demonstrators are in front of the court. Ladies, kids, old people, we are here chanting against the government.